This is Africa.
I represent South Africa, put it on the map.
Hello friends and welcome back to ReddX, your source for the freshest daily Reddit content anywhere on the internet. Promise, swearsies, you know it. Today, we are jumping into r/NeckbeardStories. There are no neckbeard vampires in this story, unfortunately, but if you do want some of that, you can go ahead and search up our last Neckbeard Stories video. That was a wild ride. But this one is as well. It's quite a saga, so we're going to go ahead and jump into it without delaying any longer. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the tale of Managerbeard, King of the Ladies. Now, I write a lot of posts, so for the people that read my stuff regularly, I just need to clarify, this is not the manager I wrote about in the Kevin Was My Boss stories. Those ones actually should have been called Kevin Was My Boss, but I didn't know about that term before posting. This also isn't the a-hole owner I described in my recent malicious compliance story. No, this is my first story about this particular character, whom for the sake of this post we shall be calling Managerbeard. Managerbeard was one of the floor managers at the first restaurant I had worked at all the way back in 2006. This restaurant was part of a large South African chain of restaurants, and frankly, if someone had claimed that The Office was loosely based on this place, I would have believed them. Now, I should probably mention, I don't even recall where this manager came from. To become a manager at this particular chain, they put the managers through training that can literally only be described as slavery. This guy, he just kinda showed up one day, and suddenly he was our new manager. No one knows what had possessed the general manager to give him this position, but to be fair, the general manager wasn't earning his PhD anytime soon either. I first encountered Managerbeard while I was on a bar shift. He was a shifty looking character, slightly overweight but not massively, facial hair all over, bling everywhere, and yes, he did have a fairly sizable neck beard. At this time, I had a fake bullet I always wore around my neck. It was one of the last gifts my mother had given to me before she passed away, so I hardly ever took it off. Our golf shirt uniforms mostly covered it anyways. So Managerbeard comes behind the bar and immediately tells me to take it off. No greeting, no introduction. I had absolutely no idea who this guy was and what he was doing behind my bar. "I'm sorry, who are you and what are you doing back here?" I asked, both flabbergasted and pissed off. Managerbeard introduced himself as the new manager, and then proceeded to make me remove the chain. I looked at him with a look of amusement, as he was also wearing one himself, not to mention all his piercings, but I guess leading by example wasn't his thing. So I complied. Managerbeard walked into the office, I put it back on again, and the topic never came up again. So cut forward a week, and Managerbeard has already made himself widely unpopular amongst the staff and customers. Not only because he was a control freak about all the wrong things, but because he was a womanizing idiot. Whenever a table of ladies came in, which was pretty often, Managerbeard would go harass them. This would usually go on for a while until one of them usually stood up to come complain and request to see a manager. As he was usually the only manager on shift, you can see the conflict. Usually this would require one of the waiters or bar staff to make up a fake crisis to call Managerbeard away. We would then, as politely as possible, try to explain to him that the customers wanted him to leave them alone, and then he'd threaten to fire us for insubordination. To this day, I still don't think he knows what that word meant. Cut forward to a specific night, Managerbeard is on shift again, and we get another complaint. Surprisingly enough, not about him for once. I was behind the bar, so I didn't see this personally, but this was what the waiters told me had happened. The waiter had called Managerbeard over to go talk to a table, and go talk to them he did. He walked up to them, literally swinging his lanyard with his shop keys around in his hand, and he said to the complaining customer, "I hear you're being difficult." The customer looked at him funnily, and then explained her complaint. I have no idea what her complaint was, but this restaurant being as bad as it was, I could list off a textbook of possibilities. Then, instead of going to do anything about it, Managerbeard pulled up a chair and joined him at the table. He sat there for a while. The customers started looking more and more pissed off until, inevitably, a girl stood up from the table to complain again. This time, obviously, about Managerbeard. Under Managerbeard, with no other managers on duty, I was technically the second highest ranking person in the store, so the complaint came to me. However, this rank still meant absolutely nothing, when the person being complained about was my boss. I did apologize to the customer and promised her that I would get Managerbeard away from their table, but explained that beyond that there was really nothing else I could do. I did write down the number for corporate for her and begged her to file a complaint. I never heard anything more about this story again, so no idea if she ever did, or if those corporate hacks just didn't care. Both were equally possible. Moving on, another night. This time, there was a particularly drunk and annoying woman at the bar. The rest of the bar staff and I wanted her gone, but Managerbeard had spotted this fair maiden, and like a falcon, had swooped in on his prey. Now, this woman was already over any kind of limit that I felt comfortable still serving her, but in South Africa, there's no alcohol serving limit, or at least if there is, no one ever told me. They also definitely did not tell Managerbeard, because suddenly I got the order to give this fair maiden anything she likes and to just put it on his tab. He didn't actually say fair maiden. Actually, none of us were even speaking English, but just adding that for the neckbeard effect. So, Managerbeard pulls up a chair next to her, and the excessive flirting begins. I wish I could recall the dialogue that was spoken, but this was back in 2006, so my memory on the details is quite fuzzy. I do remember that the bar tab they ran up was quite excessive. Then somehow, without any of us realizing, both Managerbeard and the drunk customer had just vanished. We didn't think too much of it at first, but soon an hour had passed and Managerbeard still hadn't returned. More time passed, and now we reached closing time, still with no manager in sight. The kitchen staff was now getting angry, as no one had come to do the post-cleaning inspection and they were going to miss their taxi home. Post-cleaning inspection from a neckbeard? Bruh, just go home. You could. Also, the waiters were pretty upset as they were waiting to be cashed off and no one was there to do it. Once more, I was the highest ranking person left in the store, but besides being allowed to handle the occasional void and customer complaint, even though those weren't really allowed, but the managers tended to look the other way as it made their jobs easier, I had no training or authority to take care of any of this. Understanding the plight of the kitchen staff though, I went and did the post-cleanup inspection. I'd seen this done before, and if Managerbeard could do it, then so could a mentally handicapped monkey. And then I sent them all home. The waiters were fresh out of luck. I wasn't going to attempt to cash up and to carry the responsibility for something if it didn't add up. So all we could do was wait, and wait, and wait. I did try calling the general manager a few times, but his phone was switched off, as always. I kid you not when I say that just after 3 a.m., 3 hours after the restaurant was supposed to close, and 1 hour after our liquor license expires, Managerbeard finally returns, reeking of cheap booze, laughing like a drunken lunatic, and holding a drunk customer under his one arm. No apology, no explanation of where he had disappeared to for almost 5 hours, and he instead starts berating us that we're sitting at the bar instead of working. We'd finished the stock take and restaurant/bar cleanup hours before, just in case anyone was planning on asking. I was livid. Everyone was livid, and that feeling was about to triple. Before I continue, I should add that this particular restaurant chain all had surfaces made of copper. These surfaces had to be polished with Brasso every single evening. It took forever and we were filthy by the time we finished. Once completed, we would always put up the bar stools on top of the counter. This would indicate people not to sit there. So what does Managerbeard do? That's right, he takes down 2 of the stools for him and his new milady, flicks his fingers, and tells us to get them more drinks and to once again put it on his tab. I was ready to kill him. I mean, physically kill him. Managerbeard repeated his command and I refused. So did the other barman on staff. So Managerbeard, while threatening to fire us, proceeds to lean across the bar, grab a bottle of vodka out of the speed rail, lets it slip from his grasp, and sends it shattering across the floor. The other bar staff and I just kinda stood there, our mouths gaping open.
Whoops, I guess you're gonna be slightly short on your vodka count tonight,
Managerbeard said smugly, with his milady laughing as if this was the funniest thing she had ever heard in her life. Managerbeard then entered the bar and proceeded to pour the drinks for them, before once more taking a seat next to his mistress. Alright, spoiler alert, turns out she was married. I had had enough. So I did a printout of the day's sales, had the waiters work out their total sales with calculators, got the right amounts from them, put the money in the individual bank bags, walked into the office, put the bank bags down on the desk with the total and receipts, waved to the security cameras, and we all left. You'll be shocked to hear that Managerbeard was never even apprehended for any of this. Oh, and where did he disappear to for 5 hours, you might be wondering? Outside CCTV footage had caught them sneaking out into an alley. I don't even want to suggest what happened back there. Coming out, getting into a car, assuming with ladies, and then just sitting there for the rest of the night. Freaking neckbeard a-hole. There are 2 stories I have about Managerbeard, one of which literally landed our restaurant on the front page of the local newspaper for racism, which in South Africa is basically considered a much greater crime than both rape and murder. Really? Wow. So if you enjoyed this one, let me know and I'll share those ones too. Damn dude, well I guess trash breeds trash, you know what I mean? Oh, they definitely belong together. I wonder what her husband will have to say about it. And where is he during all this time? He's working till 3 a.m.? I don't know, man. Maybe they just have a broken marriage. It's none of my business. Managerbeard seems like an absolute idiot. And I can't wait to hear some more. Did you think that this was the only story that I had of Managerbeard? Oh no. It wouldn't be a saga without multiple stories. So let's jump into the next one. Managerbeard and the waifu. Aw yeah, so fresh, 14 hours. Welcome back, my dear readers, to part 2 of the harrowing saga of the character we have come to call Managerbeard. I'm not going to read the whole thing like that. For those of you who have not read part 1, turn back now and first do so, as we will be skipping all introductions this time and getting straight to the beard of the matter. I really like the way this guy writes. We live in a strange world. Some report UFO sightings. People without functioning brains become world leaders. People exist who identify as rodents. But topping off that list, my dear readers, is something that happened between this story and the last. And that was that on a particularly rainy day, Managerbeard got a girlfriend. For the purpose of this tale, she will be referred to as Dawn. Not her real name, obviously. Now, I know what you're all picturing, and I shall tell you now to immediately put that image out of your heads. This girl was attractive. She was well-spoken, she was well-educated. She was basically all of the things that Managerbeard was not. Even the general manager, possibly the only friend that Managerbeard had once asked if she had been dropped on her head as a child. Oh, but you're questioning why the title refers to Dawn as Managerbeard's waifu? The reasoning behind that one is simple, for you see, in less than a month, Managerbeard had started introducing Dawn as his wife. Dawn never protested this and would always just stand there awkwardly. Now, another thing worth noting about Managerbeard is that he was the jealous type. Aren't all neckbeards? That's kind of one of their things, right? And I don't mean the type of jealousy that all men possess. Oh no, dear readers. In less than a month, Dawn had become his property. He may well have printed out a deed of ownership and stapled it to her forehead. It took less than 2 weeks before our waitressing staff had grown 1 person larger in number, and almost immediately, Managerbeard had allowed his jealousy to consume him. If any of us tried talking to Dawn, he would threaten to fire us. If any male customers tried chatting her up, he would threaten to throw them out. But never was it more transparent than the time that she had given one of the bartenders, let's call him Justin, a ride to work. Justin and Dawn lived in the same apartment complex. He had been dressed in full uniform and was making his way to work on foot when Dawn had pulled up next to him and offered him a ride. The ride had only lasted a few minutes, and they had entered the shop at the same time. This obvious attempt on Justin's part to steal Managerbeard's new wife had been too much for Managerbeard to handle. Way too much. As he literally yanked Justin into the office and went off on a tirade, stating that
Dawn was his wife, and if he ever caught him so much as looking at her again, he'd beat the hell out of him before firing him.
Yeah, those were good times to be working under Managerbeard. Now, this may be hard to believe, but the sudden relationship of Dawn and Managerbeard wasn't the only strange thing that had happened in that time gap. Oh, but how I wish it was. The other thing was that somewhere in that time, Managerbeard had taken a liking to me. Not only to me, but also to my best friend and co-barman, Ben. He liked us so much that, on rare occasions, he even allowed us to speak to his wife. I emphasize that this was rare, though. The biggest downside to this affection was that Managerbeard had now constantly started inviting us over to dinner at his place. And by constantly, I mean every single time that he wasn't on shift. I literally could not imagine anything I would have wanted to do less than spending time with Managerbeard outside of work. Hell, spending time with him inside of work was already ranked just beneath it. So we would come up with excuses, and then more excuses. Honestly, it had become quite hard to keep track of all the lies we had been telling. Cut forward to one such night, we'd blown Managerbeard off by telling him that my father was in town and was taking us out to dinner. Lying to him had become such a regular occurrence that we had forgotten about it as soon as we left the store. Oh, what naive creatures we were. Bored that night with nothing better to do, we decided to pay our place of work a visit as patrons. We took our seats by the bar. I had a favorite spot right by the Coke machine, as I could easily reach the machine and fill my glass up as many times as I wanted. South Africa got free refills too? Damn, I thought that was just an American thing. But alas, this good time was not meant to last, as not long after our arrival, we caught a glimpse of a drunken neckbeard coming towards us, and he was everything but happy.
So, I see you lost your father.
Managerbeard snapped sarcastically as he approached us. Both Ben and I stared back at him awkwardly, obviously now victims of our own lies.
You know what you are? You guys are freaking buttholes.
Managerbeard continued, now loud enough that people were staring. Dawn had come up behind him and was trying to calm him down to no avail. Managerbeard continued,
Do you know who this is? This is my wife.
Yeah. Hi, Dawn, I said, finally finding my sarcasm again.
No, you do not speak to my wife, Managerbeard continued. You know what? You're fired. You're both fired. Don't bother coming into work again. You're done.
And with that, Managerbeard stormed out of the store, with Dawn throwing us an apologetic look as she scampered after him. It was a brief but awkward encounter. Fortunately, or unfortunately, based on your perspective, the alcohol had been a bit too much for Managerbeard that night, because by the time our next shift rolled around, he had forgotten that encounter completely. Cut forward again, and I honestly don't recall how much time passed between these nights. I'm guessing it was about a month. Ben and I found ourselves at our place of work on another off night. This time we weren't alone though. You see, the other floor manager, let's call him Brandon, had invited us to join him for drinks after his shift ended. Brandon was a nice guy. I would pick up troubles of my own with him at a later stage when we both fell for the same waitress, but that's a story for another time. Nevertheless, before that all happened, we had become pretty good friends. So him, Ben, and I had picked a table in the smoking section. I was the only non-smoker between the three of us, so I just had to endure it. That aside, we had been having a rather nice evening. Mark the arrival of Dawn and Managerbeard. Ben and I both tried sinking into our chairs, hoping that they wouldn't notice us. But Brandon was one of those guys that seemed to like everyone, and he waved them over. A few short sentences were exchanged, and suddenly our threesome had grown to 5. Managerbeard ordered gin and tonics for both him and Dawn, and so continued the night. Now, I'll be honest, up until a point, this was one of the more pleasant encounters I had had with Managerbeard. He hadn't yelled at us or threatened to fire us for inadvertently saying something to Dawn. He almost acted like a normal human being. Nearing the end of the night, though, Brandon had ditched us to go chat up a girl, and we had been left alone with Dawn and Managerbeard, and the rather colossal bill that now lay before us. Almost none of it was mine, as I'd been drinking only soft drinks, which I got for free anyways. But Brandon and Managerbeard had been ordering shots all night, and anyone who's ever visited a bar knows how quickly those can skyrocket your total. Then the following words.
I hope you guys are prepared to pay for all this because I didn't even bring my wallet.
Ben and I were speechless. It was bad enough that Brandon had stiffed us on his part of the bill, but now we were going to have to pay for all 5 of us? I was about to open my mouth to protest, but the next thing I knew, Managerbeard was on his feet and literally running towards the exit. Dawn, once again, gave us that apologetic look before trotting after him. She wasn't scoring any brownie points on this either. Ultimately, I paid the entire bill, including a generous tip for the waiter, before leaving the store feeling both pissed and defeated. So that concludes part 2 of the Managerbeard saga, but check back for part 3, the one of note that landed us all in the papers, coming very soon. Until then though, stay away from those neckbeards. God, it's so unfortunate that part 3 isn't up yet, but I'm gonna make sure to include it in our next Neckbeard Stories video because I just love Neckbeard Stories. There's something about it. I do feel like kind of bad for OP, but in the end it's like you're letting yourself get pushed around, you know what I mean? Why would you pay the bill? Why would you pay the bill? These 2 managers screwing one of their employees to pay for all the shots that they took? Bruh, not gonna happen. You're at your place of work. Print out that receipt, bill, whatever, place it on the manager's desks and go, here you go. I paid for the one soft drink that I had and refilled all night. And then there's also the bullet necklace thing in the first story. I mean, that worked out well enough, but grab your balls, OP. Find your balls and grab them and go, look at this. I am a man. I'll take my necklace off when I'm damn good and ready. And I ain't paying for any of your drinks neither. The only way I pay for your drinks is if I'm getting a blowy after this. And I ain't interested in Managerbeard or Brandon. Damn. It would be a little too far. Ah, whatever. He-Man, a Managerbeard spin-off tale. Because we always got to warm up before the big game. You know what I'm talking about? So, I know some of you have been anxiously awaiting the exciting conclusion of the Managerbeard saga. But as they say, good things are worth waiting for. Hey, me and OP are on the same page. And as we are living in a world of remakes and cinematic universes, I thought I should start one of my very own and bring you this spin-off episode about a fellow we shall call He-Man. The Managerbeard cinematic universe? That sounds horrifying. If you've not read the original 2 Managerbeard stories, I put the links below. And also a link to the video in the description if you haven't seen it. To bring you a full introduction, we'll have to go a few months back, before the arrival of Managerbeard, and during my time as a waiter, He-Man had been one of the original waitering staff, or so I had heard, having not actually had the pleasure myself of meeting this character quite yet, but I had heard the legends that surrounded him. Now, I'll be completely honest, when the other waiters told me about He-Man, I thought they were making him up. Everything just sounded so outlandish. It sounded like they were describing a cartoon. No person like this could actually exist in real life, right? Oh, how I miss the days when my mind was still so young and innocent. I actually managed to work there for several months without ever having encountered this creature. But as life tends to turn out, all good things must eventually come to an end, and so was the case of my life without having met He-Man. He was a gangly-looking neckbeard, about 2 meters tall, facial hair that made him look much older than he actually was. Thinking about it, he was kind of like the living embodiment of the BFG. Was that Big Friendly Giant, I guess? If the Big Friendly Giant talked really slow and really should have been a writer for really bad Hollywood movies. The night I met him had been pretty quiet, we'd closed early, and I had been looking forward to an early night in bed. But fate, allied by He-Man, had different plans for me, and after cash up I found myself cornered, listening to He-Man's life story, which I am going to repeat to you now. But before I do, I need to reiterate that I have changed nothing about this story. I did not add any details, nor am I overselling it. This is the real story he told me the night that we met. The tale started with him winning the lottery. Obviously, as this was back in 2006, I can't actually remember the amount that he had claimed, but this was allegedly no small win. The story continued, claiming that he had used that lottery money to purchase himself a Ferrari and a 20-carat diamond. And that 20-carat diamond he had apparently taped into the Ferrari's exhaust pipe. Isn't that 20-carat diamond like $2 million and you just throw it in a fucking exhaust pipe? Not the brightest move, even if he's not lying. There's no wonder why that money is now gone. Not ridiculous enough yet? Well, hold on to your seats. But wait, there's more. Shortly after this purchase, Crises had struck He-Man's life when his girlfriend, Tori Spelling, yes, yes, the actress from Beverly Hills 90210, stole his beloved car and took off with it to Europe, all the while with the diamond still taped to the inside of the exhaust. Tori Spelling does seem like the kind of woman who would do something like that, though. And no, we're not done yet. On a personal mission, now to reclaim what was stolen from him, He-Man purchased another sports car and took off to Europe himself to track down his thieving girlfriend. And tracked her down he did, right onto the set of Beverly Hills 90210, which is being filmed in Europe, I guess, where they immediately offered him a part on the show that he was unfortunately forced to turn down, as he already had a job at a restaurant where we worked. I can't be an actor, I'm sorry. I have a much shittier job somewhere else. Now, you know the face that you're currently making after having that read? Pure joy? Triple that reaction, and then imagine 18-year-old me staring back at this guy, my mouth gaping open with the realization that I had just spent almost 20 minutes of my life listening to that. Yes, the version that you just read was mercifully vastly summarized. Cut forward a few months, past the events of Managerbeard Part 2, to a particular Monday, and the actual story. I mentioned in my previous chapter that on very rare occasions, Managerbeard had granted Ben and I passes to actually speaking to Dawn. This night was one of those rare occasions, and having just finished a staff meeting, the three of us stood by the head of the bar making the usual insignificant chit-chat. During the course of exchanging these pleasantries, the corner of my eye caught a character creeping, slowly, in our direction. A character that needs no introduction for this chapter. Ben had recently had his own sit-down with the He-Man, so he knew exactly what I meant when I spoke the words, "Oh shit, here comes He-Man. No one say anything about anything." He-Man rested his arms down on the bar and greeted us with a tired expression, looking something like a dog that had miraculously survived its own euthanasia. We greeted him back, all of us being careful not to follow the words hi or hello with anything that he could possibly mistake for a conversation starter. We all just stood there, in silence. Ben and I were feeling almost too afraid to breathe. But then the silence was broken with He-Man saying the following sentence.
"It's cold in Russia."
Ben and I both nodded in agreement, both of us still being careful not to respond to him. And then the lady in our little circle broke and asked, "Why do you say that?" Ben and I shot Dawn razor-sharp glances, our expressions asking, "What did you do?" But alas, the damage was done, and He-Man had been given the gap that he had been waiting for. Like earlier, I've neither changed nor added anything to this story I'm about to repeat, so sit back and enjoy your flight.
"Oh, I just came from there,"
He-Man answered Dawn's stupid question.
"You see, my girlfriend landed a job in Russia, and I had to move there this weekend."
I should pause the story to point out that this girlfriend was at least real, as I'd met her in real life, but let's just say that his standards must have dropped exponentially if Tori Spelling had been his girlfriend prior to her. Sorry, I digress.
"I drove her to the airport, but she'd been late for the flight, and the airport staff said there was nothing they could do for her, and she'd have to take a later flight. But I just could not allow this, and I demanded that there must be some way they could still get her onto that flight."
Ben and I stared back at him with blank expressions. Dawn still looked mildly interested, proving that she had, in fact, never sat through the lottery tale before. He-Man continued.
"The ticket lady looked at me and said, 'Sir, the only way you're getting on that plane is if you get on with her.' And so, I had no other choice but to join her on her flight. There was only one seat still available, which was in first class, so they seated me there for the flight, where I got to drink anything I wanted for absolutely free. And then, as we arrived in Russia, I looked out the window and saw that it was snowing."
He paused for a moment, as if building up dramatic effect for his final sentence in this ridiculous story.
"And that is how I know it's cold in Russia.
I breathed a sigh of relief, as it seemed the story was mercifully over, and then responded with the same amount of enthusiasm that I manage at the weddings of brides that I don't like. Wow, that's nice. And that's why you missed the staff meeting? Dawn added. I shot her a sharp stare again. Her relationship with Managerbeard was starting to make more sense by the second.
Yeah, I just came back from the airport,
He-Man responded to her, looking pleased with himself and seeming satisfied that we actually bought his ludicrous story. We continued standing there in silence until I came up with the oh-so-subtle excuse that I had to leave to go hang my laundry up before that Russian snowstorm hits us here. Ben snuck away with me, and we abandoned Dawn alone with He-Man, hopeful for her to either hear the lottery story or for Managerbeard to see He-Man chatting to his wife and just kill him. I would have been satisfied with either outcome. And that brings us to the end of the tale of He-Man. And yes, I will not stall any longer, so the next story I will share, in fact, will be the awaited final chapter in the Managerbeard saga. Until then, take very good care of yourselves. I still don't completely understand why he's called He-Man. Is He-Man stupid or something like that? It's a bit out of my time period, so I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comments. I kept assuming that he was like a rippling muscly guy, but in the description he's just like a 6-foot-tall beanpole, basically. So the name doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I've definitely met some people like this that just lie through their teeth in order to impress people around them in any way possible. There was specifically one guy that I remember in the Navy. I remember his name, but I'm not going to say it. And he just thought he was the coolest because he'd go up and like lie to everybody and we'd all just kind of smile and nod, pretend we believed his story. And then as soon as he walked away, everybody's like, oh my God, what a moron. That story was so full of it. We used to have like this little game before he got shipped to a different duty station where we would try to make him one-up himself, like ask leading questions. It was definitely some quality fun for a bunch of drunken Navy jackasses, as we were back in our younger days. Good times though, good times. Anyways, I'm glad we got to experience a bit of He-Man. Honestly, I'm thinking the cinematic universe sounds more and more like a better idea. There's probably a ton of interesting characters. We can get a little more of Dawn's backstory and stuff like that, but you know, this story's from half a year ago, so I don't think that it will ever happen, but you know, send user TinderGuy11 a message and maybe ask him about it if you're interested. I got a whole lot of other stuff that I need to be covering on this channel, but if I see it, I'll bookmark him again, and if I see it, then I will read it. Or hopefully somebody will let me know. But anyways, let's get into that long-awaited final entry in the Managerbeard saga right now. The Fall of Managerbeard. That was so sad. And so, dear readers, we have come to the finale in the epic saga of everyone's favorite neck-bearded manager who, just like Frodo before him, journeyed through the wastelands, climbed the mountains, reached the final steps, just to say, this wasn't really worth my time, and threw it all away with one single act of stupidity. Links to the first two parts and the He-Man spin-off at the bottom. So, like all stories in the trilogy, it starts with me behind the bar. Justin and his brother were bartending with me that night, with He-Man and Dawn making up part of the waiting staff. There were other waiters on duty too, but I don't recall who. They didn't play any notable part in the events that unfolded. But of course, this would not be a Managerbeard story if we forgot to mention our hero, the man keeping us all safe, the almighty manager that night who was, of course, Managerbeard. I know, duh. It had been an average night. Not quiet, but not too busy either. The shop, in a shocking turn of events, actually had food to sell that night. Trust me, that's gonna be my next story. So the customer complaints had been fairly limited, but that was all about to change with the entry of a new table. A table that just so happened to get Dawn as their waitress. The table of four had taken seats in the smoking section, ironically enough the exact same table that we had sat at in story 2. There were two couples, casually dressed, but fairly neat, and although not politically correct to say, but also vital to this story, they were black. I guess you could say African American, if my more sensitive readers would prefer, But doesn't this story take place in South Africa? So how can they be African Americans? Aren't they just Africans? All right, I'm not going to get into that right now. I hadn't taken much notice of this table initially, to be honest. To me, they were just another table on an average night, and I had worked hard to get myself out of the waiting role, in part because I no longer felt like taking note of customers. But this all changed rather abruptly when Managerbeard came storming past the bar, yelling to me and the other bar staff to come help. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that, but you get a sudden rush of adrenaline which pushes you to immediately comply, very often not actually taking a moment to question exactly what it is that you're complying to. In my case, I had leaped across the bar, quite literally. I just always wanted to do that. That is awesome. And the other barman had taken the normal route, still getting to the table at the same time as me. Managerbeard and He-Man were there too. The customers were on their feet, being shoved towards the door while they were shoving back, yelling, "Racist! Racist!" The other bartenders and I had now joined the shuffle. It looked like we were players on a rugby field. More yelling, He-Man took a kick to the leg, falling to the floor dramatically. He would later claim that he had irreversible damage done to his spine in this incident. Yep, conditions. But ultimately, we did get the customers out the door and gave a massive sigh of relief. He-Man was still on the floor, floundering like a fish out of water, but nobody paid any attention to him. Finally, Justin asked the question. What was that all about? Managerbeard puffed out his chest and took a deep breath in as he started recalling the devastating account of what had led to that moment.
Dawn had been their waitress and told me they wanted to speak to a manager. I got over there and they told me that Dawn was a bad waitress.
There was a long pause that seemed to drag on forever. And? I finally asked.
And what?
Managerbeard replied, looking confused. So what led to us throwing them out? I continued, so scared that I already knew what his answer was going to be.
Didn't you hear? I just told you. They called Dawn a bad waitress.
Managerbeard snapped. Another long silence ensued before Justin turned around and started walking back towards the bar. His brother followed. I was still staring at Managerbeard, my mouth hanging on the floor, before finally turning around and slowly joining them. This was not going to end well. Cut forward about a week later. We'd not spoken much about the incident. I think we were all still in a state of shock. Nothing had come of the incident either, and I started thinking that maybe we had dodged a bullet. This was all about to change when I received a phone call that I had to come in immediately. Honestly, I didn't even make the connection. Justin and his brother were standing by the bar when I arrived, and Justin asked if I knew what was going on. I shrugged, stating that I didn't have the faintest idea. The general manager appeared from the office and called us all in. We entered, seeing Managerbeard there too. We eyed him with contempt, none of us bothering to greet him. And then the general manager dropped a newspaper down on the table for us all to see. Now, to be fair, it was The Sun, so not exactly any kind of publication to be proud of, but still a rather popular one nonetheless. On the front page, a photo of the people we had thrown out posing in front of the restaurant, and a headline stating something to the extent of "Massive Racist Incident at Stellenbosch." I don't know why I was concealing the name, everybody else has figured it out by now. So the article retold the story, basically exactly how it had happened, but of course it had turned it into a race thing, and we were not looking good. Now, I don't often come up for Managerbeard, but even I knew that wasn't true. This had nothing to do with race. The idiot was just freaking crazy, and I'm 99.99999% certain that if the patrons had been white, the night's events would have played out exactly the same. But unfortunately, they hadn't been, and this is Africa. Now, rightfully so, the general manager was pretty livid about what had transpired here. However, his anger seemed to be very much misdirected. For even though Managerbeard and Dawn had been the only ones named personally in this article, somehow the general manager had gotten the idea into his tiny head that we had somehow been responsible. He argued that we had escalated the situation by jumping in, and was now threatening to fire us. We all looked at Managerbeard, who thus far had not spoken a single word, expecting him to speak up and defend us, but he just continued to sit there, in stone cold silence. Justin was the first to speak up, stating that he wasn't going to stay here and listen to this, and started to leave. His exit was blocked by the general manager, grabbing his arm and pulling him back into the office. "Do not put your hands on me," Justin said in a very threatening tone. "Wow, there are just lawsuits breaking out all over this place, isn't there?" I said, almost breaking out into laughter.
You think I won't hit you?
The general manager threatened back. "Oh no, I want you to," Justin said, pointing to the security camera. "Please, go ahead and hit me, so I can say that Draw's general manager assaulted me at work." The general manager started unbuttoning his shirt.
You see this? I'm taking off my work uniform. Now I'm just a random customer, and I can hit you as much as I like.
"I don't think it works that way," I said, this time being unable to contain my laughter. I'd always considered the general manager to be a moron, but now he was reaching Managerbeard levels of idiocy. The general manager apparently hadn't heard me and really had taken off his shirt. He now had Justin by his shirt collar and was pushing him up against the door. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the weight of two men pressing up against the door handle had completely bent it out of shape. The general manager now started choking Justin, causing his brother to grab the general manager by the neck and trying to pull him off. I sighed loudly before jumping into, hardly being able to believe that I was about to get involved in another shoving match at work in under a week. Also, I really didn't want to touch our shirtless manager because, gross. But what about Managerbeard, our hero? Yes, he was still there, and he still had not said a single word. This was probably the longest he had gone without him talking since I had met him. Finally, the general manager released Justin. Sweat was running down his entire body while he was panting like a dog. Justin glared at Managerbeard, sitting in silence, and yelled out, "You coward! Are you just going to keep sitting there? This is all your fault!" What happened next is an image that I will never get out of my head until the day that I die, as Managerbeard started sobbing. I mean, real tears running down his cheeks as he said,
Nobody likes me.
It got me so good. I could not believe what my eyes were witnessing. A grown man, the most arrogant and obnoxious man I had ever met, now sitting on a chair, sobbing about the fact that
Nobody likes him.
I felt so sorry for him, and I really don't mean that sarcastically. This pathetic creature that I had spent months detesting, that everyone detested, had finally broken and showed at least a shred of humanity. I actually wanted to just give the idiot a hug. I mean, how do you stay mad after seeing that? I'd mentioned in story 2 that General Manager might have been Managerbeard's only friend, and now, seeing that his friend needed him, he told us we could all go home. It was a surprisingly pure moment in what had been an otherwise very unpleasant experience. I later emailed the newspaper myself, explaining my point of view about the incident, and stating that although Managerbeard had handled the experience awfully, race had honestly not been any kind of factor. The journalist had actually replied to me, very professionally for such an awful paper, and thanked me for my statement, saying that she was looking into writing a follow-up story, which, to the best of my knowledge, never happened. It's just one of those replies that they give, and that the original article had stated that the victims were planning on taking legal steps against the restaurant, but if that did actually ever take place, I carry no knowledge of it. As for the repercussions to Managerbeard and everyone else involved, in true Dross fashion, there had been none, and the incident was just never mentioned again. Sweep it under the rug. Managerbeard's rare moment of humanity that we had witnessed in the office had apparently been locked away in a safe, because the next day he had turned back into the colossal prick that we all knew, reminding me instantly just why I hated him. Although the incident had not ended his career at this restaurant, he was ultimately fired when security cameras caught him, Don, and some other employees opening the shop at 4 a.m. and having a little private party with the bar stock. I heard that he and Don actually did get married eventually, but the marriage didn't last, and I have no idea what happened to either of them after the divorce. And so ends the harrowing tale of Managerbeard. So wherever he is today, or if he's maybe even reading this, I implore to him, please never go back into managing. Oh. Well, it seems like everything turned out okay. I wish I had a big leather-bound book on my lap that I could just close and look up meaningfully at the camera. Wait, there's no camera. We don't use face cam. Jeez. But honestly, it does seem like everything fell into its right place, you know? Apparently in Africa, racism is a higher crime than murder or something. I do vaguely remember that being mentioned in the original Managerbeard stories. So I'm super glad that nobody went to jail, because that's just a horrible punishment that nobody deserves. And honestly, how do you even prove racism, you know? Like OP said, Managerbeard probably would have kicked the people out if they were white. It's just that, you know, he's insane about his wife, who he later married and divorced. And good for Dawn finally getting away from him. Jesus. I didn't feel bad for Managerbeard at any point in this story. Even the point where he's crying and he's like, nobody likes me. It's like, yeah, because you're a fucking prick. You brought it on yourself. Like, it's like somebody just punching themselves in the face until they break their nose, and then they're like, everybody, my nose is broken. Be sad about it. It's like, dude, you did this. I feel nothing. You did this. The one thread of the story that I guess is left loose is Justin being completely assaulted by the general manager. Didn't file a lawsuit or anything, but hell yeah, dude, if you choke me, I'm getting like a severance, a whole retirement package. Like, you have to pay the price. Not because I can't handle being choked for a couple of minutes, but mostly because I want your stuff. I dared you to choke me, and you did, but now I get the last laugh. Although maybe Justin did file a lawsuit or something, and it just got swept under the rug like everything else seems to do here. What a terrifying place to work. I mean, I guess a job's a job, but oof, some jobs are definitely harder than others. And as for you, friends, I have a very, very special job for you today. It is absolutely critical that you meet the deadline. So by tomorrow, I'm going to need you to like, comment, and or subscribe to this video, and possibly even share it on your social medias. I know it's a big task, but our numbers are up and we want to keep them going up, and you'll all get a bonus at the end of the year. We've also got links in the description to Twitter, Discord, Patreon, PayPal, Facebook, all the things. And of course, I would be remiss not to thank my gorgeous, wonderful, generous patrons. We've got Lady Nix, Crimson Albedo, Dot Nathan, Robert Waits, Just Austin, Pope Squid, Rebecca H, Cider Drinker, Tato Ferret, and The Last Shinobi. God, that's so exciting. Our Patreon numbers are going back up. We had a big hit after Christmas, but I'm glad people are getting back on the horse. If you can support monetarily, obviously that's massively appreciated. Thank you guys so much. And if you can't, well, that's fine. No pressure. I just appreciate you hanging out with me today, and I hope that you'll come back and hang out with me again tomorrow. In order to do so, you'll need to keep yourself safe out there, so wash your hands as much as possible. It's very important. But also important is to take some time out and do something that you personally, honestly enjoy. Something just for yourself, because you are loved, you are worthy, and you definitely, definitely deserve it. I'll see you in the next one, friends. And until then, bye-bye.